Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Project WIP. I am your host Joelle, and I am another Gen Z designer that is trying to survive this thing called the industry. Before we begin, I just want to apologize for the sound quality for this episode. I think there was some connection issues, so I had to do like a lot of heavy editing. So apologize. And also, I'm trying to figure out a way so this doesn't happen again in the future. Because of that, the sound in this episode are gonna be a bit muffled because I had to edit out a lot of the electric static noise in the background. But yeah, this is our situation. I'm sorry, guys. Um, anyway, back to the episode. Um, First of all, apologize for this long wait to produce another episode. There's a lot of things that happened. I went back to China to visit families, and there's a lot of work and life changes in general, which is why it took me such a long time. And also, this is the second time I'm filming this video because I wasn't happy with the first one. So, it took a lot of time. There has been a lot of script and concept changes since my first draft of this topic that we're going to talk about today. So, thank you so much for your patience. If you're still here, and if you're someone new joining the podcast or the channel, welcome. So, as usual, I'd like to just share something simple or small to start as a appetizer. So, I have this friend since very little, and she's actually sort of like my mom's friend. She's a little older than me, and she has a fashion brand called The Hidden Forest. I remember when I was little, I used to visit her studio and see her fashion designs. Um, I remember she told me this sentence that summarizes the philosophy of her brand that truly stayed inspiring to me until this day. And especially after I'd grown up and learned more about art and design, I think I learned to appreciate this even more. So here's the sentence. There's no unique fashion, only unique souls, and that's how people recognize each other instantly in this vast universe. And I just think this sentence is so beautiful. I think fashion is a choice made by people every day. It could be a simple one, it could be a sophisticated one. Um, but it's sort of this thing that created by either a machine or a person, by someone that you may never know in your life or someone that knows you very well in your life. But it's like a canvas that people use to paint their personalities and express who they are as a person. And so maybe you could say a simple black t-shirt with your favorite pair of denim could be a form of art, maybe? Yeah, and that's a little bit I want to share with you before we get into the main topic. Um, okay, so for today's topic, it's been, like I said, it's been a little crazy. It's been all over the place. It started actually from somewhere completely different. So originally, I wanted to make this topic that is about how do we define success and how does a creative person achieve success, and whether or not passion is 100% necessary in order for you to um, be a successful designer. I was ready to fully go into like data research details. I actually downloaded Genshin Impact and Harry Potter on mobile to in order to do my research, but at the end, honestly, I just couldn't open it and I got really lazy and I'm really bad with data informations. So actually, I was working on the script when I was in China at the end of last year. I was already struggling, but when I came back from China, I took this trip to Japan for 2 weeks. First of all, it was the first time I was in Japan, so extremely inspiring. And after that, I think the topic sort of deviated from this data heavy kind of topic to more of a free flow kind of conversation that is more about authenticity and finding joy and fulfillment in creativity. I just think that is a much more interesting topic. Um, so I want to tell you about my trip to Japan first. So this trip was my first trip ever to Japan, even though I've been wanting to go since like the beginning of time. um, and it's also my first solo trip ever. So it was really exciting and I had a lot of really fun time. And there is a very specific part of the trip that was extra special for me. And it was the 3 days that I spent on this island called Naoshima. So Naoshima is basically this tiny island that is 1 hour of ferry away from the port of Uno, and is basically this giant art museum in the middle of nature. So when I was there on the island, it was actually off season. So I think a lot of the residents actually left to spend winter elsewhere. Um, or I don't know, there's generally just not a lot of people on the island, and most restaurants and shops are actually closed for off season to renovate their houses or, just something else, taking a rest. And the only thing that were open were actually the art museums and the faculties that works in the museum. And I promise this is not just me telling you this whole story about my trip to Japan. It is really related to our topic today, even though our topic today is also kind of all over the place. So when I was on the island, people who have visited before actually recommended me to rent a bicycle to go around the island because it's a tiny island and there is not as much public transport just in general. And so many people like just rent bikes and go around the islands just way faster. But me, as a super unorganized person, I actually missed the renting time. By the time I got to my hotel, I realized the bike shop was on the other side of the island. So I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm just gonna walk to all of the places. And to be honest, I think this was the best decision I've ever made during this trip. So in total, I spent 3 days in Naoshima. And during the time I was there, it's either I took buses from one port to another, which is basically the furthest distance away, or I just pretty much walked my way through the island. And because of this way of traveling around the island, it forced me to slow down my pace. And I had a lot of opportunities just to notice the environment around me. I think all of the time I spent just walking through the mountain roads and going up and down the mountain stairs, it was just really peaceful and it took me out of this fast-paced environment that I'm always been used to and sort of just have been working around for the longest time. And it took me by surprise that I actually had more opportunities to go to more places because I didn't have to worry about that I need to go back to the original place to get my bike if I choose to walk all the way up a set of stairs and then go down the other way. So my plan every day is to wake up and walk from one major art house to the next. And then in the middle, I would just kind of roam around and take my time to explore. So on the island, there are a few major art houses that is spread throughout the island. The major ones are architectures that are designed by Tadao Ando. And there's also many other architecture projects that are more experimental and done by other artists that are actually scattered and hidden among the residential buildings. And so what I do is I would walk from one major art house to another, and then in the meantime, I would just walk through the residential areas and kind of discover my way around the city. I wouldn't even call it a city. It was more like a little town. And I would remember discovering these art houses on the way. And the joy of finding something someone intentionally wants you to find. And I think it just makes this feeling exponentially special to me. And originally, I actually only booked for several of the art house projects. I wasn't sure if I want to go to all of them. And I just want to take my time, just enjoy maybe some of them. And I was also using Google Map at first. But after a few times that I start to discover this joy of reward, this joy of finding something, I stopped using map completely and I just sort of walked around all of the buildings. And I think this whole experience of finding little art installations and project houses became so much more fun to me than what it actually is. If I were to just like go to these houses and look at what I'm supposed to look at. And I remember even during the times I was finding where the project houses were, I discovered so much things that is either in the nature or someone in the residence area just decided to put up this really beautiful little garden or something. It was all of these details that I've discovered on the way to the smaller houses, which were on the way to like even bigger art houses. I think all of these kind of just stacked on top of each other, and it made this whole walking experience so interesting because it was just layers and layers and layers of discovering new things that were super interesting. And honestly, I've never felt so inspired before. I think it was the whole experience that made these art extra special. And this whole experience echoes a lot with a video that I watched by Bliss Foster, who is a really cool fashion journalist on YouTube. Great content. I've learned a lot from his channel. Basically, in the video, he says the joy of art and creativity is the discovery itself. It's like the things you didn't know was there shows up right around the corner, or the perfume you only smell once you hug someone. It introduces you to this feeling of gasp, the feeling of reward, and it just brings up this fondness when you're enjoying life or a piece of art created by someone. And I honestly think this whole experience is creativity and is inspiration itself. What I mean by that is whoever that is observer, even though they can discover the same thing, but they will notice different things based on just simply who they are. And therefore, different story is created by whoever that is, the observer. And that is why creativity and inspiration can be unique to each different person. And this whole thing just proves that I think creativity just takes time. And it takes time for a person to observe things. It takes time for people to feel them. It takes time for people to take in the information. And it creates such a big contrast to the world we live in right now, which is everything is so streamlined and so fast-paced. Everything is under templates, everything is for your convenience to grab. There are all these short-form vertical contents or tutorials online that teaches you how to become a concept artist in 1 year and how to become a master painter in these 3 steps. Things like that, you know all those videos, we've all seen them. Not saying that they're wrong or anything, but it just paints this picture of the environment that we're in and the industry that we're working with. Especially with the introduction of AI, I think it really just speeds everything up even more. And so I think just being a designer and an artist in this current era, it's important for us to be mindful of what we're taking in, and just knowing that creativity is this wandering path where it just needs to go through the process of taking in knowledge and build it into intuitions and evolves into creativity and things like that. And for properly trained eyes, you can really tell the difference between rich design with clear intentions from a fatigued one, decorated with information overload. And that just sums up the experience of my little trip to Naoshima for 3 days and the things I've learned from it. So since we bring up the topic of AI, I also want to just maybe talk about what I've seen around the media and just what I think about it, I guess. Yeah, like I said, today's topic is just really all over the place and it's a mix of everything, so just bear with me. So since the beginning, I was pretty neutral on the topic of AI, just like the tool itself. I think it's a really powerful tool. I think it can help some creative people out there that are not necessarily trained with the skill of doing art or illustration or in visuals, maybe just in general. And I think it's a great tool for these people to utilize and create something interesting and express that visually. And I just think this helps to enrich the environment. And I'm also aware that there is this anti-AI argument really since the beginning of the introduction of AI, is that artists are saying it takes away the process and the proper time needed for someone to develop a proper artistic skills and craft. But I think this is only partially true because, yes, it does take away the proper process of someone training to become an artist. Because at the end of the day, I still think AI is just a tool. It is not the solution to creativity or to a design. And I think the introduction of AI to the industry feels very similar to the introduction of 3D previously. And I think what's different about AI is that it gives the illusion of a final outcome. I don't think that's something has happened before in our industry, even when we're speaking about 3D. Because I guess everybody remembers how bad the animations were when 3D was first introduced. But just looking at the high fidelity images that AI produces, it really feels like it's the final outcome. And I think because of this kind of illusion, a lot of the decision makers in the industry, not necessarily the designers, are taking this tool as if it's the final solution. It becomes a way to like cut corners and to spend less time and energy on a project. At times, I think it's understandable, but when it becomes the only solution to creating something, it really limits the possibilities of creativity because the AI in itself is literally a tool that is based on data and algorithm, which is not necessarily how creativity works, in my opinion. And I hope, at least for the artists and designers out there in the creative field, can at least see through this illusion and use this tool mindfully and not give in to the deception. And actually, there's another concern about the topic of AI that I want to bring up that I've noticed around recent media that spread like wildfire, which is the ton of images that flooded everywhere in the style of Studio Ghibli. Honestly, I was not super aware of this until I started seeing a bunch of Instagram reels about it. The reel.
There is now more fake Ghibli slop in the world than there is actual real Ghibli. So for a lot of people who actually don't watch that much Studio Ghibli stuff, you know, they not really weebs like that, this is now Ghibli for them. This to them is Ghibli. If you show, I'm trying to explain to you, if you show them Grave with the Fireflies, if you show them Spirited Away, if you show them Totoro, they don't know what that is. They haven't watched it, they haven't seen it. They wouldn't recognize it as Ghibli. From the point that this stuff came out, it doesn't matter anymore. This picture of the IDF is Ghibli. I caught my husband. There is now more fake Ghibli slop in the world than there is actual real Ghibli. So for a lot of people who actually don't watch that much Studio Ghibli stuff, you know, they not really weebs like that, this is now Ghibli for them. This to them is Ghibli. If you show, I'm trying to explain to you, if you show them Grave with the Fireflies, if you show them Spirited Away, if you show them Totoro, they don't know what that is. They haven't watched it, they haven't seen it. They wouldn't recognize it as Ghibli. From the point that this stuff came out, it doesn't matter anymore. This picture of the IDF is Ghibli. This picture of Modi in a warplane, this is Ghibli. This picture of ICE, Tweeted out by the White House, this is Ghibli. This sheer amount of slop that has been made, if you were to calculate the amount of time that has been spent watching actual Ghibli films this year, and the amount of time that has been spent looking at fake Ghibli stuff, including this image, more time has been spent looking at this stuff than actually watching Totoro, than watching Spirited Away, than watching Grave of the Fireflies. The original becomes irrelevant. The copy becomes the original, simply by virtue of there being more of the copy than there is of the original. This is the effect. There's two ways of looking at this. One is that this exposes that we actually don't have as deep a connection as we think we do as people. As a people, we don't care about art as much as we like to think that we do. Or two, that AI is making it so that we care less about art than we used to. We're tearing ourselves away from a connection with art that perhaps we used to have. And that it's just speeding up that process.
And aside from the huge copyright issue that AI has always faced since the beginning, this brings up another deep concern for me in terms of using art style to spread messages, especially in the case of Studio Ghibli. They spent decades making animations to spread the message, to convey their philosophy as a brand, and to spread the message of hope. You simply can feel the warmth in a drawing just by the way a little girl is drawn. An art piece. I mean, I would always argue that an art style at the end of the day is just a shell that holds whatever message you want to spread. In the case of Ghibli, they've truly used their art style as a tool to bring a sense of safety, to bring a sense of hope to the audience. And it's just really disheartening to see this image now online literally be used to spread any kind of message, no matter from whom, no matter from where. And during the time of this happening, Studio Ghibli really had no power to control these informations. And just like what it said in the Instagram, people who didn't know about Studio Ghibli now understand Studio Ghibli being, whatever the first image they saw online with their art style. And for me, as the all-time big Miyazaki fan, it's really disheartening to see. And I think in this specific case, the use of AI has genuinely become a dangerous tool. Yeah, and it's just it's just a concern I have for the use of AI right now. And just to let you guys know that I'm going to make a separate episode on the topic of Miyazaki in the future. So I'm not gonna go into like this massive details about how I think of Studio Ghibli, but I think it's a really interesting topic that just popped up recently, and I think it's worth it to bring it up and talk about it. And I think this concern is not necessarily just about the case of Studio Ghibli itself, but more of what I've noticed just around general media. It is this extreme encouragement on superficial things in general. I mean, from fashion trends to AAA video games to musics to movies to literally health, diets, fitness, I don't know, whatever, lifestyle, political topics, anything that is related to popular culture and popular media is all extremely superficial. And I think the whole introduction of AI just really pushed this process so much further and so much quicker at such a short time. I think it's just really heartbreaking and sad to see that the core of something just really became less and less important to people in today's society or in this generation. And my concern with AI is that it creates the most glamorous shell around this thing that is just devastatingly empty. know? And honestly, this process has been happening even before the introduction of AI. But unfortunately, in this case, the tool just became the dry wind that fed into this vicious fire. On the other hand, I think as creative people, we really have the key to solve or slow down this process. And I think the first step to that is authenticity. And it takes time. It takes time to understand, it takes time to feel. I think authenticity is, I think wanting to express is authenticity, making mistakes is authenticity. And it really is unpredictable. It's messy and it's powerful at the same time. And all of those things is the direct opposite of AI, which can be a very useful tool or an extremely dangerous one. It's really interesting to learn about all of these things and see the changes in the industry and in the world. And I guess this brings us to the last bit of this podcast or this video is that I think we live in a really chaotic world right now. I am honestly numb to all of the crazy things that is happening all over the world. And being a designer in, I think, especially my generation, I think we're in this era of transitioning and we're kind of like the first group of people that sort of are facing it. It's really interesting and it's also a lot of information to take in at once. I honestly feel like I'm experiencing some sensory overload. On one hand, is like crazy things are happening everywhere all over the world, and at the same time, so many new things are being created just day by day, and it's like the next coolest design, the next most beautiful realistic high fidelity sci-fi movie or are just beauty standards, and everything is just evolving every single day, every single hour. I feel very numb to all of these things. I don't know if you guys feel the same. But yeah, it's just a crazy era, I guess. And I hope maybe after some panic and a good night's sleep, we can still get up and adapt and create and keep inspiring each other and do something that we actually believe in. I think the experience in Naoshima really showed me the preciousness of experiencing something slowly and taking the time to feel and notice things and observe things. I know that's a luxury in these days, and it's probably not gonna fit into the work environment that we all are surviving every single day. Um, I think it's really valuable to practice that and just to like experience it and take a break from this crazy fast environment in general. And of course, also, I'm not just telling everybody to go to Naoshima and stare at Japanese concrete buildings if that's not your thing. But, just like finding something that you enjoy and stay there for a little bit to observe it. I think it's a really precious experience. I guess to close out this very messy video, I hope all of the designers and just, I guess, creative people out there in general can just take some time to enjoy things and to experience things. And I hope we can inspire each other and inspire whoever that looks at our creation and think of something that they enjoy as well. And yeah, this is the end of our video. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you made it to this point, I will see you in the next video. Bye.